Hi there, I'm still here at BKC Ih Moscow and just before the conference, BKC Ih Teacher Training Conference, I have another guest, Rory Fergus Duncan-Goodwillie. And you are, I suppose, from Scotland?
I am indeed, thank you.
Yeah? Whereabouts?
I'm from a town called Dundee. It's just 60 miles north of Edinburgh.
Okay, so the climate in Moscow should be more or less okay with you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Especially this year, there's not been much snow.
Yeah, is it like warmer in Scotland, or?
Well, yes, but it's all relative, isn't it? Because it's in the north, so it's still cold.
All right. I'm gonna just introduce you to the public. You have a CELTA, IHCAM and Delta Module 1 qualifications, and you've been working at BKCH for 4 years now. Rory started as an English teacher and continued to become a senior academic manager. You've lived and worked intensively with great passion in European and African countries. Which African countries were there?
I worked in Ghana and in South Africa for a small time as well.
And your focus is young learners, so teens, right?
Teenagers and young teenagers, but I also teach students of different ages right now.
And the topic of your talk at the conference is Keep Them Coming Back for More, 3 Keys to Student Retention. Will it be from the perspective of a teacher or academic manager?
Both, actually, although there are practical tips for both teachers and academic managers, which I think will be extremely useful for them.
Without giving too much away, why do you think it's so important to take care of retention of students?
We're working in education for profit industries, so it's vital that we keep our students, because not only do we want to help them, but they also hold, they hold all of our jobs in their hands, really.
And what could we do to make sure that students are staying with us or coming back for more?
Well, without giving away too much about the content of my talk, there's sort of 2 parts to it, professional and personal. So professionalism is just connected to how you are in the classroom. Does the way that you look and the way that you behave match up with the student's idea of being a teacher?
What do you mean, like being professional, being like building relationships?
Yeah, it's a good idea to study the kind of students that you're going to be working with. I mean, for example, I work with young learners, so they expect someone who's got who's fun and who's energetic and who has different approaches to different tasks. So that's something that they're expecting, so we can meet those expectations quite easily. If you're a teacher trainer, for example, then people might be expecting you to be a bit calmer and to go through things very methodically, to give demonstrations and explanations. So both of these things are professional, it's just different kinds of professionalism. The element of the personal element, if you will, is more connected to establishing a sort of personal relationship with students. So you make them interested in you as a person and you show interest in them, and based on that they are encouraged to keep coming back because they see you as someone that they can turn to when they have problems, a friendly face, if you will.
A mentor.
Exactly.
What experience do you have with teaching Russian teens? Because, I mean, there are so many people who would complain, oh, they are only in their phones, they are not interested in anything, they can't read War and Peace anymore, sort of things. What is your experience?
I think that Russian teenagers they're not significantly different from teenagers in other parts of the world, but the expectations that are placed upon them are. You mentioned they're not reading War and Peace, but in fact that is one of the expectations that they have on them. And in fact, despite this, it's extremely impressive that they still manage to develop their characters in addition to meeting all the expectations that are placed on them. So they have to study all the time, but they also find time to develop their personalities, have interests outside of school as well. So in one way they're normal teenagers, but in other ways they're very exceptional, and I love working with them because of that.
And you said that they are not so much different from British teens or whatever teens.
Yeah, not in the sense of their outlook on the world, no. But maybe the expectations that are placed upon them are the biggest.
In Russia?
Yes.
You mean in educational ways and?
I think so. There are other things that we could talk about, but because I work mostly in education, we should focus on that. So Russian teenagers have hours and hours of homework every night. Not many Western teenagers have this placed upon them. Similarly, there's this emphasis on like joining lots of clubs, doing music, doing sport, doing everything possible, which I think is helpful in some ways, but it does place a lot of strain on teenagers, especially at this critical time in their lives. So they have a lot to deal with.
Yeah, probably not so much time to enjoy life.
Well, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a teenager who says that they're enjoying life regardless of where they are in the world.
Yeah. That's right. That's a good point. And so you also prepare for exams, right?
Yes.
FCE, what sort of exams?
Oh gosh, I think it would be easier to talk about the ones I don't prepare people for now. So we have FCE, CPE, CAE, GMAT, IELTS.
Oh, even the American ones as well.
Yes.
Oh, right. So it's quite a wide repertoire.
Yes.
Because like I personally, I only stick to Cambridge. I even gave up IELTS. Now I like only FCC, CPE and I don't even dare, to go to these American exams because I feel they are so different.
That's a very sensible decision. You'll live longer because of this. You'll have much less stress.
Right. All right. How do you cope with this? Like GMAT also incorporates maths, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's just a case of doing the research and putting in the work. Of course, because like you say, it's to do with mathematics, and primarily we're dealing with English students. That can be a bit problematic if there's something that they don't understand. But it's like with anything that you do, even as an English teacher, you research your grammar points and you come up with the activities and you teach them. In the same way with GMAT, you research the grammar or the mathematics points for that particular day, and then you present them and practice them. It's a very similar process.
What sort of people prepare for GMAT now?
I've very exceptional people. Certainly, there's never an average GMAT student. They're all very high flyers in business, economists, architects.
It's for MBA, right?
It is, yes. So they're all extremely gifted people, and I'm very grateful to work with them.
All right. But even if we go back, by the way, do you do this YEGA, the Russian state exam?
I personally don't know. My colleague Natalia is responsible for that.
So you decided to just stay away a bit from that?
For now, yes. Obviously, there are other things to be focusing on, but certainly it's not something that I'll be ignoring forever.
So I still wanted to just go back to this notion of exam course. I discussed it already with my other guests, but there are lots of opinions about the balance between exam skills or exam training and language. And what is your stance on that? So where do you think there's a balance between how to keep this balance? How much language, how much skills should there be?
It will ultimately depend on the students. I think teachers should let the students be the guide on this. The first step in teaching any student will be conducting a needs analysis and diagnostic testing.
And particularly if you're dealing with one-to-one, right?
Oh, in any class, I would argue. So that will determine what the students need. So if they've got quite a well-developed vocabulary and lexical and grammatical knowledge, then they don't need this so much input. But on the other hand, if they don't have it, then they will need a little bit more help. So that will affect your balance. And of course, you're constantly testing to see if they need more support or less. But ultimately, if I could have it in a phrase, it would definitely be to let the students be the guide and to see exactly what it is they need, rather than looking at what material you have available first.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, in your experience, what do you have usually more with your FCC, CP students?
I tend to find there's a lot of language development that's required of them, just to bring them up to the level, essentially, which is why I usually recommend students prepare for FCE for 2 years rather than the standard one, because of course everybody wants to achieve a result, but they also want to achieve a good result, and I think the more preparation that they have, the better in that sense.
Yeah, but 2 years for FCE, well, this is I've never heard of such courses. Do you mean mean that they start with like lower B1 or middle B1 level?
Usually they'll start with B1 plus. That's the standard, and then you take them up from there. Of course, you get the occasional students who start with B1 level, and again, you still have to take them up.
No.
But even students who are at B2 level, I still think that they should have as much practice as humanly possible before they take this exam. Of course, again, the students will be the guide. If they need to take the test within a year, then that is what must be done.
Okay, so, but what about CPE, for example? How much will it take, or does it take with your students?
Again, it will come down to them individually. I find 2 years worth of preparation for any exam, just 1 year of input and 1 year of practice is the best way of going about things.
1 year of input, 1 year of practice? What exactly do you mean with input here?
If we talk about language input, so all of the grammatical and lexical input that should be
so
required.
you first take the language and then you take the format?
And in ideal circumstances, yes.
Right. Okay. And what happens with their motivation? Don't you sometimes think that 2 years is like too long of a goal, that they have a too long way to go and they maybe...
That can happen. And of course, then you just adjust accordingly. So let's say that they want to take this exam within the space of a year. Then the course will have to be designed in such a way to reflect this. So instead of 1 year of input and 1 year of practice, then it will be 6 months of input, very intensive input, and then 6 months of preparation based on that.
That's a really interesting approach, because, well, my course lasts 8 months and we have everything incorporated. So we take care of the format and have language training. It's all like incorporated. And still some people say that it's too long. But I think that's no.
Well, they're very demanding.
Yeah, it is a very demanding and intensive. And even those 8 months, it's like a lot of work. All right, so my last question is, what teacher training courses do you teach at BKC, and who do you think might be useful to?
Well, currently there are two. One is TKT for the Teacher Knowledge Test,
Okay.
and I think...
The core modules.
Yes, and TKTYL indeed. I'm not running one currently, but I hopefully will be again. I think that's quite useful for anyone who's wanting to develop their knowledge of just teaching in general. However, and this will depend on the individual trainer of the course. Some like to focus on exam input and preparation. Others like to focus on presenting different ways of teaching young learners in particular, but in general too. So anyone who wants to upgrade their teaching skills as well, or to receive some information on new techniques, for example, with what young learners, or it could just be with general English teaching, then I'd also recommend they take this course as well, at the very least with me, because the way I present it is almost how I'll teach general English as well. So in that sense, it can be quite useful for teachers to see what other people are doing, and they can learn from that if they so choose, and if they've not, then they've learned something for their exam. So in that sense, everyone's a winner. For the GMAT course, it's a bit more specialised. That's not so communicatively done. That's more about, well, first of all, pure input on the format of the exam, and then introducing people to different strategies and approaches to the different task types and the different aspects of it. So, for example, dealing with mathematics, or dealing with the reading component, for example. So that's very specialised. I'd definitely recommend it for anyone who's starting to teach GMAT. And it's going to be a very lucrative field moving forward, but I don't think it would be so useful for people who are teaching general English.
Yeah, so you still have some more background in maths, statistics, and this sort of thing. Yeah. I took statistics when I did my degree in bilingualism, and it was, there's a book called Statistics Without Tears. I bought it, because my statistics was with a lot of tears. But, after I completed the course and passed the exam, now I realize that this is probably the most useful course I've ever taken, because it's so much changed the approach of your daily life, and basically when you understand what is this normal distribution and all these things, I think it was immensely useful. Oh,
absolutely. Anything that teaches you how to deal with information, and especially in this modern world, then I would definitely recommend that people try it.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for watching.